In less than 2 weeks, legendary 90s band Kula SHAKER are releasing their new album, Natural Magic. I've been lucky enough to get to listen to the whole album in advance, and it really is absolutely excellent. They've released 3 tracks from the album so far as singles: Waves, Indian Record Player, and the title track, Natural Magic. So, if you haven't yet, go check out those 3 songs, and if you like what you hear, get that album pre-ordered. We've just seen Shed 7 go right in at the top of the UK album charts, and Kula SHAKER's new album is also absolutely brilliant and deserves to be heard. Kula SHAKER really were a huge deal to me growing up in the 90s, and today myself and James C. from the Oasis Podcast are co-hosting an interview with Alonza, Kula SHAKER's bass player who's also worked with Johnny Marr, and Jay Darlington, Kula SHAKER's keyboard player, who also spent many years on the road and some time in the studio with Oasis in the noughties as their keyboard player as well. And now, with all that said, let's get to the interview. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today I'd like to welcome back to my channel for I think possibly the 6th time now, James C. from the Oasis Podcast, who is co-hosting with me today. But even more than that, today I have the rare privilege of welcoming 2 of my genuine childhood musical heroes and 2 band members from one of my favourite albums of the 90s, Alonza and Jay from Kula SHAKER. Welcome.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Yes, hello, guys. So this is going to be good fun because obviously James is the king of Britpop type stuff on YouTube, and the Oasis Podcast does a little bit as well. So I thought, well, look, let's hit both sides of the equation. The reason you're with us today, obviously, other than the pleasure of our company, is that the new album is coming out very shortly. I've had a listen. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it seems like a while ago that we've done it now. I suppose last spring, I suppose. So, yeah, well.
Yeah, almost a year ago, isn't it? So
we've been playing some of the songs for a while, haven't we now? So.
Obviously, there's always been a political edge to the music. There's always been a lot of themes about whether it's, globalism or these different political themes. This feels a bit more pointed now. We're getting a bit more. I mean, you've literally got a track called like F-bombs and talking about war and things like that. Was there a particular reason why at this time it felt like you're going to go more down that route?
We're always really careful not to try and jump into any political hot pots or get partisan on shit, but we thought that's one you can stand on, that we can die on that hill. War is bad, so
yeah, we all know that.
I mean, it is getting like that where actually protesting against war becomes an act of hate in true Orwellian style. I mean, rock and roll's always about kicking back at the establishment, and the establishment are taking the piss at the moment. So we're just having some fun. We're not, we're just taking the piss out of them back. If they're going to take the piss out of us, we're going to take the piss out of you, you bastards. We know what you're up to.
What's your favourite track, each of you, on the new album?
I love F-bombs because it's silly. I love, it's a nod to the Beastie Boys, and it's a good message. Fuck war, and fuck those motherfuckers that promote it.
Yeah.
I like Happy Birthday.
I love that. I don't know if you know the new Liam and John Squire song that's just come out, Just Another Rainbow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've had quite a bit of grief for listing the words of the rainbow. And so when that came out, I thought, oh, have they just taken Happy Birthday and done a version of it? But no, it's
wished it up a bit.
Really
That's
cool
a great
song,
track, isn't it? Great psychedelic track.
Well, Happy Birthday or Just Another Rainbow, or both?
No, Another Rainbow. Well, both, actually. Keep up the good work, fellas.
Yes.
It's a
tune with a psychedelic flag. Yes.
And it does feel like there's a bit of a movement now. Like Shed 7 got to number 1 last week. Liam and John are back, like we said. And, it feels like, there's a bit of a resurgence, actually.
Yeah, it seems to be coming up to good times in music again. We've had a bit of a grey spot, haven't we, for a best part of a decade now. It's not really been much happening, I don't think, in music. But this is all looking promising.
So lads, I'm going to ask a question now. It's a bit of a deep dive, this one. I don't know if you saw, I got to chat to Matt Priest from Dodgy on my channel, And he told me this story of the early days. I think this might be pre-J, I'm not sure, when your band was called Objects of Desire. And he said that Dodgy played alongside you guys. And at one point at a live gig, there was a geezer wearing jodhpurs and riding boots and holding up the sun and whipping it with a riding crop. I have got to ask, what's the story behind that?
They're crazy heady days. We had a singer. We were in a band. Yes, it was called Objects of Desire. Yeah, we had a crazy singer. He did actually go properly crazy in the end. But yeah, I think he did wear jodhpurs. He was just proper nutter. Well, we played with Dodgy. Absolutely, they had a little club in Kingston upon Thames called the Dodgy Club.
Dodgy Club, yeah.
3-piece, and we'd set up. I mean, Crispin set up a little club in Richmond Ice Rink, in the function room at the back of Richmond Ice Rink, called the Mantra Shack. We'd have different bands over, and it was a little club night. So what we did, they came to play at our venue, we played at their venue.
Was there any sense of competition between the two of you guys?
Not really. I mean, there was no. They were just much better than us. So there was no. There was no at that time. You saw how good they were at that time. It was certainly, you see something like that and you realize you have to raise your game, and it was more that than anything else. Yeah, so I mean, in that sense, there was a competition. You wanted to be as good as them.
Talking about that, you coming through from, when it turned into Kula Shaker, obviously you came through and you were lumped in with all the Britpop bands, or what became known as the Britpop bands. You guys, yes, you came through and you had the haircuts and you had the guitars and things, but it was very different. You had the Indian influence, you had the much more 60s influence. When I first heard the song Hey Dude, you go like, oh, that was a good chorus. And you go, wait, there's another chorus. Like this, it's just like, you think it's done, okay, now it's going to go back to the verse. Whoa, it's gone off in this direction now. And then there's just extra
psychedelic
stuff.
Tourette's.
Yeah. Well, you could say that, I suppose.
I remember when Hey Dude came out, I must have been 13 or something, and I'd heard Tatva on the radio. I was like, that is like the best thing I've ever heard. I was mesmerized. I absolutely was. And I went out and bought it, and I bought the bastard wrong CD, because you had 2 CDs, and I got the one that didn't have the proper album version on. So I went out and got K. And I remember seeing that video for Hey Dude, where you guys are on the rooftop of the bus driving around London and just thinking, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. What do you remember about like doing that?
Oh, it was such a hoot doing that.
We had that French director, Stéphane Sidney. He was dating Kylie Minogue at the time. We were just starting to pick up, so we were in this whole other. It was another world for us, certainly for me.
I couldn't stop laughing actually, because it was just so ridiculous while we were doing it. We were just on this open top bus going over all the sites you'd expect in London, and people just going about their general day, sort of looking up, going, "What the hell is going on up there?" And there was a point where we were on top of a car, I seem to recall, pretending to be Superman strapped to the front of a car, going around London, like you do.
You guys supported Oasis at Knebworth, which must have been a hell of a gig. Noel was quoted as saying Kula Shaker are the best band in Britain as well, so that must have been quite a big deal at the time.
Yeah, we were lucky that they just liked what we were doing, and vice versa. And I guess we've got quite a few records in common in our collections. Yeah, that was amazing getting that gig. I mean, it's just like a sea of people. It was insane.
Well, it was like those big 80s kind of massive festivals, but instead of some international, mega band, it was, a bunch of guys that you could kind of relate to, like rock and roll band, playing as, pretty, almost punk.
And then moving on then, Jay, obviously you ended up being part of Oasis, or, playing with them for a long, long time. So did you become pals with them? And then how did that sort of transition through?
Well, that was mad. I kind of stopped music for a bit. I had families and all that stuff. And had a normal job at the time, and I got back from work one day, and the missus at the time said, "Yeah, there's an answer phone message you might want to listen to." And I went, "What do you mean?" She went, "It's Noel Gallagher." And I went, "Oh, fuck off! It's probably my brother taking the mickey or something." So anyway, I played the answer phone. It was definitely Noel. So I rung the number, and he's just like, all right, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Everyone hates us at the moment. Do you want to join the band? I was like, yes. And he was like, don't you want to think about it? And obviously he didn't realise I was working in a warehouse at the time. So, yeah. So I just went up for rehearsal with them and it clicked. And then I did about 7 years with them, I think, till they split. Car crashes, all sorts, you name it. Midget tossing backstage, the whole lot. We had it.
Because that was on the Lord Don't Slow Me Down documentary. That's
right. Yeah.
So obviously, Jay, you were there for most of the stuff behind the scenes. Were you there in 2009 backstage for the final bust up?
I was, and you can read all about it in my book, which is out next week for $2.99. No, I'm joking. Yes, I was, but I wasn't in the room. I just heard crash bang wallop. I was eating my lunch at the time, and I thought that sounds bad. And I just thought it was something had fallen over or something. And then the tour manager came in and got me and said, "Leave your food, we're off." And I went, "What do you mean?" Obviously, just got carted off, and then got told in the car what had happened. So, yeah. It was all very surreal that day. I wasn't really involved with the crash bang wallop side of it, but you know, his brothers and all that, and it.
Dare I ask, were you ever involved in any? You seem like a pretty chill guy. I don't know. Were you?
No, I didn't get involved in any. If I could help it. I mean,
no one would mess with Jay.
No one would mess with me. They get juju.
He does. He do his juju magic on them.
That's it.
Yeah, and in terms of recording as well, I believe you only play on one Oasis recorded song.
That's right. Yeah, I did a session at Abbey Road for them, which was quite surreal because the last time I was there was with Alonza and the guys back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
So in the same room as well. So it was quite strange doing that. So I played on a couple of tunes. Falling Down was the one that got.
That's the only one that's credited as far as I can see.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was really surreal. I had a terrible hangover that day as well, so I couldn't open one eye. I mean, sort of Abbey Road through the headphones with Noel going, "Right, off we go then."
Are you then coming up with it yourself, or has Noel sort of got humming you an idea, or how did that work?
No, he just said, do what you do. I think he liked all those sounds that I used to, like on things like Tapper and, you know, those very psychedelic Beatles kind of mellotrons. And funny enough, Noel has one of the best keyboard collections I've ever seen. But when I went into Abbey Road, the whole room was full, and you name it, it was on there. 2 of each. So he's a bit of a collector, but he's got all the old vintage gear, you know.
One other thing I was just going to ask about on the Oasis side, actually, Jay, is that Noel would introduce the band and he would go through and pick everyone out, and you always ended up getting a load of different sort of quite fun nicknames like the Shroud and Gandalf, things like that. Were you okay with that?
No, I hated it. No, I'm joking. It was fine. It was fun. It was very funny. The audience are going to do it if he doesn't. So, you know, I've got long hair and a beard. They're going to shout something.
No, I'm warning you. I'm going to get fucking plastered tonight.
Alonza, I've got a question for you.
Okay, lovely.
You're not allowed to pick Knebworth. What was, so far, the high point for Kula Shaker live? What was the best gig you guys ever did, in your opinion?
Well, they've all been so amazing, haven't they, Alonza?
I love playing the Fillmore.
Yeah.
Fillmore West in San Francisco. We did 2 nights there, was it, in 99? And we'd sold it out. So we got you get the poster when you sell out the Fillmore, they make up the the classic pop art kind of poster. I've been reading about the Merry Pranksters and all of that shit. So it was a teenager and stuff. So to end up in San Francisco playing at the Fillmore West was just a huge.
Yeah, Cream and Zeppelin played there.
When we play San Francisco, even now they really understand the music, you know, where it's coming from. So you get some real great. You get some old heads that come down, and even that new generation. It's a really good music. Really, still a great music scene there.
I have to ask, what's that cool little red keyboard in the background?
Oh, the harmonium. That's been on a few records. Yeah, that's. Does it work? Yeah, it does work. I think
that looks like something straight off Sgt. Pepper's.
That's been on a few. That's made it on a few, hasn't it, Jay?
Oh, it has indeed. So.
Even on K.
Is it?
We picked up in Ricky Ram in Delhi, and famous music shop where the Beatles went back on their visit to Rishikesh back then.
Alonza, is that a lute you've got behind you as well?
This thing that's a bouzouki.
A bouzouki?
It's an Irish bazooki.
What kind of bullets does it take?
A 9mm standard.
Yeah, I love the way you guys kind of do seem to connect, like almost seamlessly, to the psychedelia scene. Like the fact that you've played San Francisco even, reinforces that.
Certainly in the 80s, there was, if you weren't listening to the pop scene, amongst the indie music, there was always that sort of 60s and slightly psychedelic influence. Certainly that became more apparent with the shoegaze thing, but there's always been that undercurrent, certainly within the indie scene, whatever you want to call it, that it was an indie scene back in the 80s. It was the alternative sort of scene.
So my favorite Kula Shaker track's a really obscure one, which is track 3 on K, the Temple of Everlasting Light, like a George Harrison thing, like the Inner Light or something like that. It seems to just blend perfectly to me.
Oh yeah.
I heard at least that it was a rumor that you guys had actually been endorsed and kind of given the George Harrison blessing on some level. Could you tell me a little bit about whether that's true and how you guys connected with George Harrison, if so?
I think that with Crispy reached out to him when we would do the track that we called Go Kula, which was a riff, wasn't it? It was a track of Wonderwall called
Skiing.
Skiing, yes.
From the Wonderwall music album.
Yeah.
We'd played through the riff a bit, hadn't we? And then Crispin had written a little bridge, couple of choruses, for it. So I think he reached out to ask if he could,
could use the riff.
We've used your riff in the song. If we could, it turns out it wasn't George Harrison's link, was it? It was Eric played that. It was Eric Clapton's
Eric's riff.
But he said we could use it. Never got to meet him, did we?
No, I went to a Ravi Shankar gig, believe it or not, back in the day, and he was like first or second row from the front. We were just kind of behind him a few rows. And I kept looking at the back of his head going, that looks like George Harrison. I could almost touch him, but I didn't because that's illegal. So we never got to meet him. It was always kind of, it wasn't meant to be.
The rumor I'd heard was way more elaborate than that he was the one who discovered you and signed you and all sorts of this stuff.
I prefer that story. Can we use that one from now on?
We'll have that story. That sounds much better.
Yeah. Cheers for that. Thanks.
He endorsed us to continue his work and spreading the word.
Alonza, obviously while Jay went off and did his Oasis thing, you were often played with Johnny Marr for a while. I was just going to ask what that was like and how that kind of compares to playing with Kula Shaker.
It's that world, that whole Manchester music scene that I entered into, much like Jay. It's it was a real privilege actually. It was interesting, just also becoming aware of that north-south thing that I wasn't particularly aware of, but you became aware of it in being up in Manchester, particularly. That London where the streets are paved with bastards. It was it was a different approach, that northern thing, and I liked it. My parents are Welsh as well, so that thing of just being open and speaking to strangers and stuff like that it wasn't it wasn't shocking. That there is that, especially in London, and maybe less now, but that thing of you'd have a newspaper in your face, people just wouldn't engage with other people. So no, he was great. I got to play with Zach as well, who Jay played with later as well, who's a fantastic drummer and got great sense of humor, and he's a fantastic character, isn't he? As we
are sort of moving towards the end of our time, I'm going to ask a pretty random question here, and you might not even have the answer. In an interview with the NME fairly recently, actually, Crispin repeatedly rechristened Radiohead the Arsewipes. I'm not sure if you've seen the interview, and it all seems in very good humour. This is an unlikely band rivalry, Kula Shaker versus Radiohead. Jay, can you give us any sort of background on?
Well, we defo beat them in an arm wrestle, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I reckon they'd thrash us at Domino's, mind. No, there's not really any history. I think it's just a bit of a
typical enemy fashion. They asked a provocative question, and they would
say something horrible.
The story that Radiohead didn't want their new album to get leaked, so they were thinking, what can we title it so no one will think to look into it, and they thought, I think one of the suggestions was Kula Shaker Demos, which was a cheap, nasty swipe. I don't know.
That's bollocks anyway. Radiohead is like,
we're not going to be goaded into slagging off pretentious, overrated.
We slag ourselves.
We're not going to get goaded into doing that, are we?
Well, for the record, I'd be far more likely to steal the Kula Shaker Demos.
Very
Bless you, sir.
Well, lads, it's been such a privilege to talk to you. Genuinely, heartfeltly, you guys were like huge musical heroes of mine when I was a teenager. It's such a privilege. I am a little bit emotional. It's been fantastic to talk to you. And I would love to get the chance to do so again. Thanks so much for coming on the channel.
Lovely to meet you, man.
Yeah, thank you,
All
James.
the best.
And I thought you were decent.
It's very
I
kind.
thought you were decent.
It's been brilliant, mate. It's been really good fun. Absolute pleasure.
And fantastic album.
Yeah, nice to speak to you
one,
both.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, come to a gig. Stay in touch.
Absolutely. All the best, guys.
Thanks
Take
very
care.
much.
So, if you would like to catch Kula Shaker live, they are touring the UK with their new material this year. Make sure you pre-order a copy of their upcoming album and don't miss out on the chance to catch them live on the Natural Magic Tour. This is my shorter edit of our interview for the channel, but if you would be interested in hearing the full thing, the extended one, that will be out on the Oasis podcast very soon. The Oasis Pod is a great place for long-form Oasis deep dives. They also cover many deep dive areas that I haven't covered on my channel. So, if you haven't checked them out yet, you are missing out. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.